Imagine a life where every day is a lie, where your existence is a puppet show and your puppeteer is the very person who should love and protect you, your mother. Let us unravel a tale as dark as the moonless night, a tale of a young girl named Gypsy Rose Blanchard. A tale not of monsters under the bed, but of a monster who tucked her in. This monster was no other than her own mother, Dee Blanchard. A woman who imposed a life of fabricated illnesses and disabilities on her daughter. Picture a childhood not filled with the laughter of a playground, but the cold sterility of a hospital room. Picture a mother, not nurturing and kind, but manipulative and controlling. From a tender age, Gypsy was led to believe she was severely ill, suffering from ailments that simply did not exist. Dee, a master weaver of lies, spun a web of deceit so intricate that even the medical professionals were fooled. This was not a case of a mother's overbearing concern for her child's health. This was something far more sinister. This was Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a psychological disorder where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in a person under their care, just for the attention and sympathy. Dee was not just the puppeteer of Gypsy's life. She was also the director of a grand, tragic play, with Gypsy as the unwilling lead actress. As the curtain rises on our story, we delve into the depths of this chilling tale where love was twisted into control, and a daughter's trust was exploited in the most grotesque manner. This is the chilling story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a victim of one of the most twisted cases of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Dee Blanchard, a mother who turned from protector to tormentor. This was a woman who, under the guise of loving care, spun a web of deceit around her own child, Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Dee claimed that Gypsy was plagued by a litany of illnesses, from leukemia to muscular dystrophy, epilepsy to asthma. Yet the truth was more chilling. None of these diagnoses were real. Instead, they were the products of Dee's imagination, a manifestation of what is known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This is a mental disorder where a caregiver, in this case a mother, fabricates or induces illness in another person, often to gain attention and sympathy. Dee didn't stop at lies. She subjected Gypsy to unnecessary medical procedures, including surgeries and the use of a feeding tube. She controlled every aspect of Gypsy's life, from her education to her social interactions. She even lied about Gypsy's age, making her appear younger to further the illusion of a severely ill child. But the deception was not just medical. Dee physically abused Gypsy, reinforcing the control she had over her daughter's life. She manipulated Gypsy into believing she was mentally incompetent, incapable of living a normal life. This was an insidious form of control, one that left Gypsy feeling helpless and trapped. As the years went by, the web of deceit tightened. Gypsy's entire existence was shaped by her mother's lies, her reality distorted by the false narrative Dee had crafted. Yet, amidst the deception and control, Gypsy was far from the mentally incompetent child her mother portrayed her to be. She was a young woman longing for freedom, trapped in a life that was not her own. Gypsy's life was a carefully constructed fiction, and she was the unwilling protagonist. Her mother was the author of this dark tale, writing a script that would ultimately lead to a tragic end. The stage was set for a desperate act, born out of years of manipulation and abuse. But that, dear listeners, is a story for another scene. The web of lies begins to unravel, and Gypsy starts seeing the truth. As the shroud of deception begins to lift, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a young woman whose life was dictated by her mother's whims, starts to question the reality she was born into. Imagine living in a world where you're told you're sick, where every day is a battle against an illness that doesn't exist. That was Gypsy's life, a life governed by her mother, Dee Blanchard. But what happens when the world you've known begins to crumble, and the truth starts peeking through the cracks? Gypsy's awakening was a gradual process. She began to see inconsistencies in her mother's narrative. The puzzle pieces weren't fitting together anymore. She was told she was mentally incompetent, that she had a plethora of health issues, but she didn't feel sick. She didn't feel incapable. This was the start of her journey towards the truth. In her quest to understand her reality, she turned to the one place where her mother's control was limited, the internet. Here, she could interact with the world, unfiltered and unrestricted. Her secret online activities became a lifeline, a window to the world outside her mother's fabricated reality. She met people, made connections, and most importantly, she met Nicholas Godejohn. It was through these interactions that she began to confirm her suspicions. She wasn't sick, she wasn't incapable. She was a victim of one of the most insidious forms of abuse, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Her mother had been lying to her, to the world for years. This realization was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it was liberating. She was not bound by the chains of illness that her mother had shackled her with, but on the other hand, it presented a new problem. How could she escape from the web of lies her life was woven into? This was a question that would lead Gypsy down a dark path, a path that would change her life forever. It was the dawn of realization, but with it came the burden of a horrific decision. In the throes of desperation, a plot is hatched. A plot that would shock the world. From the depths of despair, Gypsy found solace in an online relationship with Nicholas Godejohn. This digital refuge offered Gypsy a glimpse of a life unchained from the shackles of her mother's twisted narrative, a life she yearned to have. Bound by their shared discontent and fueled by their burgeoning love, Gypsy and Nicholas began to weave a chilling plan that would forever alter their lives. The plan was simple yet terrifying. Nicholas would murder Dee Dee, liberating Gypsy from her mother's suffocating grasp. As the plot took shape, the couple meticulously prepared for the dreadful act. The online world, once a sanctuary for Gypsy, now became the stage for their sinister scheming. Messages were exchanged, plans were refined, and each step was painstakingly detailed. The weight of the impending act hung over them like a dark cloud, but there was no turning back. Finally, the night arrived, a night that would be etched in the annals of true crime history. Nicholas, with a resolve hardened by the gravity of their plan, entered Dee Dee's room while she was asleep. The deed was done swiftly, a brutal end to a life that had cultivated an endless cycle of lies and manipulation. In the aftermath of the act, Gypsy and Nicholas fled to Wisconsin, leaving behind a crime scene that would soon send shockwaves through the nation. But as the initial adrenaline subsided, they grappled with the reality of their actions. They had committed a murder, an act so gruesome that it threatened to overshadow the years of abuse Gypsy had endured. A mother murdered, a daughter freed, but at what cost? The chains of Gypsy's past had been broken, but the echoes of the gruesome act would reverberate in her life, forever reminding her of the price she paid for her freedom. When the curtain falls on the puppet show, the puppet is left to face the consequences. And so it was for Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the puppet in a macabre play where her mother Dee Dee held the strings. The final act of this horror story saw Gypsy Rose orchestrating the murder of her mother, a desperate bid for freedom from the torment of her existence. In the aftermath of this gruesome act, the law was swift and unyielding. Gypsy Rose and her online accomplice, Nicholas Godejohn, were apprehended in Wisconsin, the final curtain call in their ill-fated escape attempt. Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder, a confession that saw her sentenced to 10 years behind bars. But prison, it seems, was a different kind of freedom for Gypsy Rose. No longer trapped in the web of her mother's deceit, she began to unravel the extent of her mother's manipulation. The illnesses, the disabilities, the abuse, all were fabrications of a woman suffering from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental disorder where a caregiver induces or feigns illness in another for attention and sympathy. 8 years into her sentence, Gypsy Rose was released on parole. She had served 85% of her time, a testament to good behavior and a life that had been marred by control and deception. Now she was free to live without the puppet strings, to explore a world that she had been shielded from. In the years since her release, Gypsy Rose has transformed from victim to advocate. She uses her story to raise awareness about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, shedding light on a disorder that is often misunderstood and overlooked. No longer the puppet, she has taken control of her narrative, writing a new chapter in her life. From puppet to puppeteer, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's life is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of love and care. Her story is a testament to the human spirit's resilience, a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that hide in plain sight.